the session. It's great to see you arriving. Particularly special welcome to the school team and of course all our alumni. I'm Alison. We're going to start the session in about 2 to 3 minutes time. I'd like to give people just slightly extra time to arrive into this virtual campus and to find their way into the auditorium. Fantastic to see you. So we'll just give people 2 minutes to join us and then we'll get started. If you would keep your microphones on mute, that's super. And if you want to make any questions or comments, then just use the chat area, which you'll see in the bottom left of your screen. Welcome to everyone joining us in the last 2 minutes. I'm Alison. We're going to start the session very shortly. I make it just 1 minute past now. We'll just give people 1 minute extra to find their way into the Congress Centre and of course the session. So we should be starting in just a few moments. Welcome everyone to today's webinar on how to network online to make connections using LinkedIn and other social media. This session is brought to you today through a collaboration between Career Farm and EMLYON Virtual Congress Centre. I'm Alison Edmonds, hosting the session today. I'm delighted to welcome Tony Restel, our speaker. A Judge Business School graduate, Tony's background is in strategy consulting. He went on to found the very successful topconsultant.com and socialhire.com. Tony helps recruiters use social media in their hiring strategy. So thank you, Tony, for joining us, and over to you.
Thank you very much, Alison, and great to be here today. My first experience of presenting at a virtual seminar. So looking forward to sharing lots of great ideas with you today. And I noticed I've even managed to put on a blue shirt, the same as my avatar. So I'm pleased with that level of consistency. During today's session, please do feel free to use the chat box just to put questions through. Alison's going to keep a note of those and ask me as we go along, or ask me at the end, depending on how we're doing for time, and so on. So without further ado, let's get into things. Why is this topic so important? Well, over the last few years, the way that companies recruit has evolved massively. And I find that lots of MBA students and MBA alumni perhaps haven't been in the jobs market for the last years and aren't necessarily aware of how much things have evolved. You need to be doing differently to get yourself noticed and to get yourself hired. So that's going to be the focus of our session today. In terms of the agenda, I'm going to start by talking about proactively networking with people. This can be to get on the radar of recruiters, decision makers. It can be to help in a job search. Actually, the same principles apply if you're trying to use social media to win business, to grow a startup, to win new clients. So that could also be valuable to many of you as alumni as well. We're going to spend a fair bit of time looking at that. I'm going to quickly run you through how companies are hiring today, because things have evolved, and there are a lot of jobs that get filled without you or I being able to find them. And so we need to make sure that the recruiters that have those jobs find us and approach us with those. We're going to talk about specific things to do on your LinkedIn profile and your digital presence to make yourself much more likely to be found for the kinds of roles you would like to secure. And last but not least, we'll very briefly touch on employee referral programs as well. Just before I move on, just want to stress that with all the alumni I work with and experienced hires, I'll say one thing. Those people who focus on applying to jobs online, when they next need to change careers, they focus on that activity, they tend to have the worst outcomes. And those people who focus on more proactive networking and being found by recruiters who have positions, those are the people who achieve far greater career success. So I just want to start out with that point. And, in large part, it's a numbers game. So if you think about advertising a position today, any kind of executive position, you're likely to get as a recruiter several hundred applicants for that position. And you're perhaps only going to interview 10 or 15 people. So the single biggest hurdle for you in a successful job search is actually to get job interviews. And you need to focus on the activities that are most likely to bring you job interviews. And unfortunately, applying to jobs online is one of the least likely activities to actually generate job interviews for you. So I hope that's a sort of helpful preface to the rest of today's session. Alison's very kindly introduced me already, so don't need to say a great deal there, other than to say if you want to message me on LinkedIn, feel free to do so. I have hit the limit of 30,000 connections on LinkedIn, so if anyone's trying to connect with me through this event, unfortunately I won't be able to accept those connection requests simply because of that, having hit that limitation. So into today's session, proactive networking, getting on the radar of recruiters and decision makers. So why should you proactively network on LinkedIn? What are the reasons for doing that? Well, I'm going to talk about this primarily from a job search point of view, but it is, as I say, equally valid for business development. The first point to make is that jobs being filled by advertising, there's subdued activity there right now. Companies are advertising fewer vacancies. There are more candidates fighting for those positions. And so the level of competition to get results that way has moved against you. But actually, even in a booming market as we had at the beginning of the year before the pandemic struck, applying to jobs was, one of the least effective methods you could choose to try and get a new job, simply because of the numbers. If you've got 500 applicants and only 10 or 15 people being interviewed, obviously the vast majority of people are going to be rejected and not get an interview. Jobs are often filled by people, what I call leapfrogging the competition, so being referred into recruitment teams. So if the biggest challenge is getting one of those job interview slots, clearly if someone in the business is recommending you in as someone who ought to be interviewed, or is putting your CV forward to the recruitment team directly, then that is a far stronger position for you to be in. You're far more likely to get a job interview if you have, managed to achieve that. And obviously being connected to people at different companies, being connected with people you've worked with previously, that you studied with, that you went to school with, all of these things are going to open up the number of people who are able to refer you that way. I'd also stress that a lot of job openings with smaller companies actually end up being created just because one of the business founders, owners, directors came into contact with someone that they really liked, and they created a position for that person. So if you have any interest in joining smaller businesses, very often just proactively networking with the founders and the leaders of those businesses will start to create opportunities for you. And they can be the very best opportunities because they're not even necessarily going to be advertised and have a lot of other applicants for them. But again, the number of businesses you're in contact with, is going to determine how many of those opportunities come about. I would say alongside that, that's all about trying to get a job, over the next few months. But alongside that, just generally having a bigger network in your particular industry is going to leave you better placed for success in the future. You'll get more people approaching you to see if you'd be interested in joining their business. You'll get more speaking opportunities, more people referring business to you if you're better connected. So for all of these reasons, it's really worth proactively networking on LinkedIn. Okay. So we'll talk about how you find and connect with people on LinkedIn in just a moment. But what I want to stress at the outset is that this is really a numbers game. So we get so many of the people we would like to get a job from or make a sale to. We get so many of those people connecting with us on LinkedIn each month, and a portion of them are going to start a conversation with us immediately. And then a portion of them, when we reach out to them a few weeks later, are going to agree to have a phone call with us or a Zoom call or a coffee meeting if we get back to that kind of thing. And so the more of the initial proactive outreach you do to connect with people, the more conversations you're ultimately going to have, and the more job interviews you're going to get, the more sales you're going to make for your business. So it really is a numbers game. If you go after, let's say 20 people per day, you try to connect with them on LinkedIn, and that's something that you can do in a few minutes each day. Of those, half are likely to accept your connection request. So that means over the course of a month, you could very easily be adding 200 of your ideal employers or your ideal clients to your LinkedIn network. If we write a good connection request message, or even if we write a good connection request message, most people aren't going to start a conversation with you at that point. Simply how the platform works, a lot of people will be accepting your connection request on their phone, or they'll be doing it at a time they're going through 50 connection requests, so they don't have time to reply to everyone. But a small percentage will respond. Even if 5% respond, that means you're going to be having 10 conversations a month with the kinds of companies you would like to join, or the kinds of companies you would like to, sell to if you're using this for business development. So that already is creating a stream of interest in you as a candidate or in your business as a supplier. After a period of time, let's say we've been doing this for 2 or 3 months. After a period of time, we might say, right, now is the point where I really need to get some job interviews organized for the beginning of next year. Or now is really the time I need to try and get sales meetings. At that point, reach out with a good message to targeted relevant people, because once you've connected to people on LinkedIn, you're able to private message with them, obviously, at that point. 5 to 10% are going to react favorably the first time you send them a message and try to start a conversation with them or get them on a phone call. So that means very realistically, you could have 30 to 60 calls or Zoom meetings or coffee meetings, if we get back to that, 3 months after you started this activity. So if you're looking at this now and thinking, okay, how can I make sure that, early next year, I am really well placed to get myself a new job? Well, this activity will absolutely do this for you. And I know this is an alumni event, but out of interest, I'm parachuted into various business schools to help students, MBA students who've been struggling with getting job interviews, and we do this kind of activity, and within 2 or 3 months they then have a huge number of job interviews, and very often end up with a selection of job offers at the end of their MBA course, simply from having switched their focus away from applying to jobs they found online and instead to doing this more proactive approach. So on that point, I'd say, just imagine if you had 30 to 60 calls with the kinds of companies you would like to join as an employee, or with the kinds of companies you'd like to sell to if you're using this for business development. How big a difference would that make to your job search or to your ability to hit your sales targets, your business targets? Absolutely massive. Okay. So what do you need to focus on to achieve this? So there's a few key things. Your headline on LinkedIn, which we'll look at shortly, it's what appears just underneath your name on LinkedIn. That is visible absolutely everywhere. So when you appear in people's homepage feeds, when you comment on posts they've put out there, when they see that you've looked at their profile, when you send them a connection request, in all these situations, people see your headline. So what you've written in your headline is your most valuable piece of real estate, is your most valuable space on LinkedIn. So we need to write a headline that makes people want to connect with you, want to find out more and understand what it is you do and how you could help them or why they should want to hire you. Then we need to write connection request messages that do a few key things. Firstly, we don't sell. So in our connection request, we don't say, I've just been made redundant and I really need help with getting another job in the consulting industry. Can I send you my CV? That is too pushy. It's too demanding. It's selling yourself at the outset. So don't do that. We do want to give people a reason to want to connect with us. Maybe we're alumni of the same school. Maybe we both work in the same industry. Maybe we both have lived in the same places, whatever it might be. And we do want to ask a question so that we encourage a small number of the people that connect with us to actually start a connection straight away. Okay, so we'll look at some examples of all of these in just a moment. As we send out connection requests, then we'll get people accepting our connection requests. Resist the temptation at that point. Do not start messaging people just because they've connected with you. LinkedIn and other social platforms are full of people sending out sales messages or for help the minute someone connects with you, and people don't react well to that, and so you don't want to come across that way. Obviously, if someone connects to you and they write a message to you when they connect, obviously at that point you would have a conversation with them and progress that as much as you can. But if people have just accepted your connection request, not done anything else, then just leave it for now. And just keep at the back of your mind, people don't like being sold to. They are wary of connecting to people where it feels like it's going to be a big demand on their time if they accept your connection request. So don't ask for a job immediately in your connection request. Don't ask if they're the right person to talk to about selling them this or that offering. Okay, steer clear of those kinds of things. So in terms of finding the right people on LinkedIn, I've put everything in screen grabs here so that you have these to refer back to after the session, and also so that I don't have to try and go online whilst we're on this this career session. If you're on LinkedIn and you type something in the search box at the top of the LinkedIn screen, then you're going to go through to a page that shows you search results, and you can click that you want to see people. So you want to do a people search result. When you do that, you can then click to see the various filters that are available to you to undertake your search. So I've just highlighted a few here that are available to you. You're able to find people by all sorts of different criteria. You've got on the right hand side there their current companies. So for example, if you're trying to get a career in consulting and you want to target the top 100 consulting firms, well, just do a Google search, find the top 100 firms, and then you can look to connect with people at all of those 100 companies. Okay, so that's one thing that's available. You can specify by location. So if you particularly want to work in Paris or Dubai or Sydney or wherever it is, you can obviously target your search that way. I encourage you to connect with people as second degree connections as much as possible. So that means LinkedIn shows people that you and they know someone in common. So for example, let's say that Alice and I are not connected, but we both know someone else, Jane, let's say. If I send Alison a connection request, LinkedIn's going to show her she and I both know Jane. So it makes it more likely that we're going to, accept to connect with one another because we know someone in common. So if you keep your searches limited to people who are second degree connections, then that's always going to be the case. You can also search by industries. So this bottom green circle here is allowing you to search by different industries. So you don't have to just connect with people at the top 100 consulting firms. You could actually specify that the industry is consulting, and then you could connect with people at all sorts of different sizes of companies. And then the last field that's very useful that isn't on this screenshot, but if you scroll down when you're on this particular page, you'll see you can search by job title. So that's their current job title. So if you want to target people who are partners at consulting firms or marketing directors at retail companies or founders of businesses, by putting in those particular things into the title field, you will then limit your search results to only being people who match those criteria. If you are using this to try and get a new job, I would suggest you do a mixture of connecting with people who are in HR and recruitment, but also connecting with the decision makers in the business. So very often you'll find that, the heads of a department or a director will say to the recruitment team that they want to interview someone. And so you get straight through to the interview round. Whereas if you go through the recruiters, you may end up being in a process with lots of other candidates being considered. So definitely try and go for the decision makers directly as well. So in terms of writing headlines, don't know if this is going to be shared with any of the current EMLYON students, but I've put there an example of what you would put if you were currently a student. For alumni who are in work, you're probably going to have to be discreet about the fact that you're job hunting. So what we want to do in the headline is help people understand what kind of work we do, what kind of businesses we help, what kind of results we deliver, what our niche specialism is, a USP about us. We're a top performing salesperson, we're trilingual, we're entrepreneurial, whatever it might be. What we want here is that when people see us on LinkedIn, they can self-select whether we would be interesting to them or not. So for example, I've said corporate strategy executive with a proven record of growing e-commerce businesses. So if you are in corporate strategy and you work in an e-commerce business, helping them to grow, and you want to be recruited by another e-commerce business that's going to want someone in a strategic role to help them grow, well, that headline immediately makes people realize what it is you do. And if you're connecting to recruiters at competitors of your current employer, obviously it's going to make them think, oh, I wonder if this person is looking, to make a move to a company like ours. So don't just have your job title here. If you said, I don't know, manager at, and then the name of an e-commerce business, I wouldn't know as a recruiter that you're involved in corporate strategy. Wouldn't know that you've got a record of growing e-commerce businesses. So you want to make the USPs of yourself and what you do and who you help as transparent as possible. So that's one key element, getting your headline written correctly. The next thing I would focus on is writing a good connection message. Now, I'm not writing here a connection message for you all to use, because I don't want every alumni of EMLYON to start reaching out to companies all with exactly the same message. But these are the pointers I would give you. So in your connection request message, you only have 300 characters. So it's about 3 lines of message. Don't sell or ask for too much help initially. We don't want to put people off from connecting with you. So avoid asking them to look at your CV. Don't ask them directly, are they hiring? Don't ask if they can help get your application seen by the most relevant person in the business. All of these things are leading with an immediate demand on their time that puts people off wanting to connect with you. We can try and progress the job search once we're connected with them. But at this first point, we just want to get them to connect with us, okay? Try and give the other person a reason to want to connect. Appeal to their ego. I'm eager to learn from experts in the retail industry, or it'd be great to connect because I see we both studied at EMLYON. You could also talk about what you do on LinkedIn. I tend to share posts here that help people understand digital marketing. So give people a reason to want to connect to you. And then do ask a question to encourage immediate conversation to take place. So kinds of things you could ask: how's the market been for you this year out of interest? What made you choose to pursue a career in consulting? How has consulting lived up to your expectations? I'm using the example of consulting here just because it's the industry I know, but the same would apply to any kind of sector you're going into. How's your business been coping with the pandemic this year out of interest? What kind of challenges have you been having to address in your department out of interest? Just something that is a conversation starter that isn't directly asking them to help you get a job. Because if someone replies back and says, how's the market been for you this year out of interest? Well, Tony, it was pretty shaky in April and May, but actually we've had a really strong summer and autumn, and we're growing fast again now. We're back to recruiting. Oh, that's great to hear, and then you can carry on the conversation about the fact that they are growing, they are recruiting, etc., etc. So if we do that activity and daily we're sending those 20 connection requests and half of people are accepting those, so every day we're getting 10 new connection requests, we're building up an audience of people who are going to see us on LinkedIn and who in time we're also going to be able to send private messages to get Zoom meetings, to get on phone calls. But how do you go about getting yourself noticed by this larger and larger network of people you're building? Well, firstly, I'd encourage you to share some content to do with your industry or your target industry, using a couple of tools called Buffer and Feedly, and we'll look at those in just a moment with some screen shares. What are some other things you can do though? Well, firstly, look at people's LinkedIn profiles. So there's a page on LinkedIn called Who's Viewed My Profile? And recruitment teams and business decision makers tend to look at that a lot because they're interested in who's been looking at me. Okay. So if you've looked at, let's say, the recruitment director of a consulting firm and your headline is interesting to them as someone to hire, then it's going to make them want to click through and look at your profile. So simply looking at the LinkedIn profiles of people in your target companies, is going to get some of them turning around and having a look at your profile in turn. Mentioning people. So when you write a post on LinkedIn or when you're commenting on someone else's post, if you write at and then the person's name, so at Tony Restel, that would notify me that you've mentioned me in one of your posts or one of your comments. So that then makes me go and look at that post. It makes me potentially have a look at your profile. It makes me join in that conversation. So a great way of getting on people's radars. Equally, comment on other people's updates. So if you do post on LinkedIn, you'll know you don't get huge numbers of comments on your LinkedIn post generally for most users. You get the odd comment, some likes. So when people do comment, it really stands out and really draws your attention to that particular person. So comment on people's updates, ideally asking them a question at the end of your comment so that they are encouraged to respond to you in turn and a conversation gets started. Very easy is just to like some updates. So, I remember one particular presentation where there was someone in the room who had profile views way higher than anyone else in that presentation. And we asked the lady in question, what had she been doing? She said, well, I built a network like you recommended, Tony. And then I've just been each morning as I have my coffee and croissant, I've been scrolling through the homepage feed and liking the posts of lots of business decision makers who are now in my network. And because every time you do that, they get a notification that you've liked a post of theirs, it causes people to go and have a look at you. It causes people to interact with you. So just something as simple as that can do the world of good. And then a few weeks after people have connected with you, that's when you're opening the door to then sending them a private message. So you connected with them, they've maybe seen some of your posts in their LinkedIn feed, or you've interacted with them through some comments. And at that point, when they get a message from you, you're now a name and a photo and a headline that they recognize, so they're more likely to respond. So these are the kinds of things to do. In terms of sharing good content, so two quick great tools I would recommend to you. The first one is feedly.com. That's available as a website here, as you can see. It's also available as a smartphone app. And what this does is helps you monitor niche news that you are interested in. So if you want to keep track of social media news, as I do, for example, when you create your account on Feedly, you tell Feedly a few sites that you would like to be alerted to whenever they've got new content. So I would put in, I'm interested in Social Media Examiner, I'm interested in Social Media Today, etc., etc. And then every time I log into Feedly, it shows me the latest content that has come from those particular publications. So in one place, I've got a resource that's all the things I need to know to stay on top of my industry, and a great resource if I want to share content on LinkedIn to engage and interest people on that particular topic. You'll also see over on the side of the screen that once you've added some content sources, Feedly will then suggest others to you that are very similar. So you're interested in social media, you might also be interested in Sprout Social's blog, a very good blog for people in social media, for example. So take 30 minutes to set Feedly up, and then for the rest of your career, you then have best content, best videos, best reports to do with the niche industry you're interested in. And then if you pair that up with a tool called Buffer, what Buffer does is you create your LinkedIn posts in Buffer, and you create a queue of them, and then you tell Buffer a schedule when you'd like them to go out. So if I had a schedule that said Friday lunchtime, I want to be sharing a post on LinkedIn, then even if I'm here presenting to you today, Buffer would go and share that post on my LinkedIn so that I'm active on the site, even at times when I'm in meetings, on Zoom calls, etc., etc. So both of those tools, there's free versions available, so you can use both of those. It doesn't need to cost you anything, and that will really help you ramp up your visibility on LinkedIn. So hopefully that's been really helpful so far in terms of thinking about proactive networking on LinkedIn. Another thing I really wanted to draw your attention to is how companies are hiring employees today, because it has evolved so much, particularly for you as MBA alumni. A lot of you will have done a lot of years of work experience. And so from when you first entered the job market to today, things have probably moved on an awful lot. So if we think about how candidates are hired today, what I've put here on the screen is on the vertical axis, how much it costs an employer to make a hire through different channels. So the higher up on that chart something is, the more expensive it is to make hires that way. And then on the horizontal axis, we're looking at how much of the market can an employer reach if they use these different recruitment options that are available to them. And obviously, in an ideal world, an employer would be able to recruit people at very low cost, so be low down that chart, and be reaching as much of the market as possible so that they're always making the best possible hires for each of their positions. So they want to be in the bottom right of that chart. And what we can see that's really interesting, if we look at the top right, headhunters, so historically, board level positions, CEOs, et cetera, have been filled through search firms, through headhunters, who charge a big fee to go out and research the whole market, to proactively approach all the best candidates and to try and get them to consider a career move. That's very expensive though. So historically, that's only been something that could be done for the most senior of positions. Job boards, by comparison, in the middle at the bottom here in green, they're low cost. So if you advertise a role, if you're able to get a good list of candidates through and interview some good candidates, could potentially make a hire at low cost. The problem with job boards is it only reaches a small portion of the market. So if you want to reach, let's say, the best finance directors in the retail sector, well, only a few finance directors in the retail sector might see a job advert that you post somewhere. Whereas, and this is where social media, things like LinkedIn and Zing and Viadio and so on are so powerful, because they give companies the ability to research the whole market and to consider everyone for their open positions, not just people who are seeing job vacancies. So this is what's really changed in the last few years, that companies now have social media and LinkedIn in particular as their preferred way of finding new hires. So social networking has massively impacted the hiring market. There's this big shift in the availability and cost of data about candidates. Employee referral schemes have also been made a lot more powerful by being able to plug into social networks. And also companies themselves now have social media accounts and are able to post some of their vacancies directly to people who are interested in joining their company. So all these things have changed as a result of social media. This is something I really want you to be aware of though, the hidden jobs market. There have been studies done in the US that show the majority of executive positions now are filled through the hidden jobs market. The hidden jobs market means there is a vacancy, but it isn't advertised anywhere. So if you and I go and look for that vacancy, we can't find it. That vacancy gets filled by the company that has the vacancy finding people they think would be a good hire, and then approaching those people directly to see if they'd be interested in being interviewed. So that if that means the majority of the positions that you would want to secure next in your career aren't being advertised, but are being filled by recruiters finding and approaching candidates, obviously the key thing for us is to make sure that as candidates, we are found and approached when recruiters have our dream job to fill. So what happens when there's a new job to be filled in the hidden jobs market? Internal recruiters firstly are asked to go and try and find the ideal candidates for that position and to approach them directly. If a company has employee referral technology, they may well switch that on and have that technology go and see, is there anyone who knows people who already work at our company that we should be approaching? And we'll talk about that a little bit more later. And then thirdly, they may also look to alert some of their social media followers about the roles they're looking to fill. Although probably at the kind of more senior executive level positions most of you will be looking at, that's less likely to be the case. So what does that mean we need to do to adapt our job search strategy? Well, it's absolutely key that we have profiles on the major social networks that are complete and that are keyword optimized. And we're going to talk about that in just a moment. For most of you, this will mean LinkedIn. Although if you are in a local market where you have your own local version of LinkedIn, I know there's Zing, for example, Viadio, and others around the world, you may also want to replicate this kind of strategy on your local platform there as well. But we must make sure that we can be found by the recruiters that have the positions we want to secure. Secondly, we need to expand our network because that helps us being found by recruiters, and it also helps employee referral technologies to identify us as a potential hire. And lastly, you might want to proactively follow the social media accounts of companies that you would aspire to joining. Okay, so one last point on this. If I'd been giving this presentation a couple of years ago, this kind of searching for our ideal candidates activity would all have been done by teams of recruiters. What's happened in the last years is you've now got various artificial intelligence tools that are taking even that part of recruitment away and automating it. So I put a YouTube link in there that you can watch afterwards when you get this presentation. But this is for a tool called HireTool. There are lots of different tools similar to this out there, but you've got thousands and thousands of recruiters using tools like this, and all they do is they look at a job advert. They then go out and search on the internet for people's profiles that look a strong fit for that particular vacancy. And then they create for the recruiter a short list of candidates that the recruiter should look at. And the recruiter can say, I'm only interested in seeing 50 candidates. So then HireTool will find them the best 50 candidates based on looking at the job advert, looking at your LinkedIn profile and seeing, are you a really strong match for what they're asking for? And if you're not a strong match, then you miss out. And the key thing here is whether you're a strong match isn't a reflection of whether you're a good candidate. It's a reflection of whether your LinkedIn profile is capturing everything about you that would be interesting to a potential employer. And most people, that's not the case. Most people have poor LinkedIn profiles that are missing all sorts of keywords and key information about them. Okay, so how would we go about reworking our social media profiles and our LinkedIn in particular to tap into this hidden jobs market? Overall, companies are going to have what's called LinkedIn Recruit. I'll show you a screenshot from that in just a minute, but this allows them to search the whole database of LinkedIn to look for certain skills, certain keywords, particular schools you've been to, job titles you've held, etc., etc. And they're going to search for those things, for that skills, experience, and that's going to create for them a list of people they might want to approach. So what we want to make sure is that we appear in those searches, and ideally that we're near the top of the search results. Okay, so this is LinkedIn Recruiter. So most of us will never have seen this, because when we use LinkedIn, we see the regular LinkedIn. But if you are a company, and most companies have done this, if you're a company that has paid to have LinkedIn Recruiter for your recruitment team, and they get a totally different site to use with a different interface. What I want to draw your attention to, though, is there are lots of different criteria that recruiters can use to narrow down their search. So once they've done a search, they can see here, so they've searched, show me people at who've been to certain business schools, who live in these locations, who've worked for these kind of companies, who've got these kind of job titles, and LinkedIn shows them a set of search results. Okay, in this particular instance, there's a very broad search, 4.3 million people. Not saying it's going to be as many as that. But then we've got different criteria that the recruiter can use here to massively narrow down their search. So they can only look at candidates who respond to recruiters. So when a recruiter sends you a message, would you be interested in this particular vacancy? Always respond to that, even if you've got no interest in it, because you responding to that means you show up here as a candidate who is responsive to recruiters. So if recruiters decide to only invest their time with people who are likely to reply to them, you want to make sure you fall into that category. They can also limit their searches to people who are open to new opportunities. So there's an area on your LinkedIn profile, which I'll show you in a minute, where you can indicate that you're interested in new positions. And so only if you've got that switched on will you appear in these search results. And then lastly, they can also limit their searches to only seeing people who know someone at our company. Now, recruiters historically have seen that people who know someone in our company are much more likely to join us and be successful because they already know our company. They know what it's like to work in our company. They maybe even have someone who will speak favorably to them about joining our company. So lots of recruiters will also limit their searches to only looking at people who know someone in our company already. And this, of course, is another reason why it's really important that you have a broad network of contacts in your industry, because you need to have a contact in every company that you might aspire to join at some point in your career. Each of these is binary. It's black and white. You've either got this thing or you don't. And if you don't have it, you don't appear in the search results. So that's why this is so key. Now, if you, after this session, when you're next on LinkedIn, if you scroll down your profile and look at your dashboard, you're going to see this number on the right-hand side, which is your search appearances. And this is a weekly figure. So every week, when you make changes to your LinkedIn profile, you can see, the following week, the following 2 weeks, you can see the impact that that's had, the number of searches you're appearing in. Very often, before people have optimized their LinkedIn profile, this number will be down at 50, 60, 70, sometimes even 20. Okay, so not that many per week. Mine is typically between 600 and 1,200 searches per week. Okay, if you're active on LinkedIn, you've got a good network on LinkedIn, and you've keyword optimized your profile, you should be appearing in hundreds and hundreds of searches per week. Don't worry about weekly fluctuations. Next week here in the UK, it's the school holidays, so there'll be fewer recruiters working and searching for candidates. So there will be the odd week where you see a drop in your numbers and it's just down to something like that. But what you want to see over a period of time is that your searches are running at a much higher number. So you're appearing in a lot more people's searches. If you click on that number, what you're going to see on the next page, you'll see some information about what types of companies, searches you're appearing in, what kind of job titles of people you're appearing in, and crucially, you'll see your top keyword searches. And what you want to see here is things relevant to your job search or relevant to the type of business you sell, if you're using this for selling, appearing in those searches. So right here in this screen grab, I've got social media specialist. I looked at this again this week. I've got social media expert, social media director, social media agency. So exactly what I would want to appear in terms of searches, given I'm trying to sell social media services to other businesses. If you're trying to be found for a job, you want to be being found for searches that are related to your job search. For example, very often with MBAs, you want to change career. You may have done an MBA to move away from IT and get into a strategic role, for example. And so you look at your search results. Am I still appearing for loads of searches for IT terms, or am I now appearing for searches that are much more to do with strategic issues? So that's what you want to pay attention to. And if you do the work on your keywords, you should really be able to increase this number and also be being found for a lot more relevant terms for the type of job you want to get into. Some suggestions for how you might do that. I mean, firstly, just have a brainstorm in your particular job. What are all the things that people might want? If you were trying to hire someone for your ideal position, what would you, as the employer, say you were looking for? I want someone who has experience of this, speaks these foreign languages, knows these software programs, etc., etc. But you can go and look at job adverts to achieve this. So if you go and find, let's say, 20 job adverts for the type of position you would like to secure, you go down in that job advert to the section that talks about the must-haves our ideal candidate will have. And then there's usually a series of bullet points. We want someone who has experience of the retail sector. We want people who have whatever it might be, an MBA from the following schools. You can then start to build a picture of what are all the things that need to be included on your profile so that you would appear in a search if a recruiter was searching for candidates for this position instead of advertising to fill the vacancy. Okay, so that's one really great way of filling in keyword gaps. If you go to look at a job advert and go to apply for it, you'll also see some information about top skills that applicants have for that position. If you've got a premium account on LinkedIn, you get more visibility around that. So that's also another great place to uncover that. But essentially, you're trying to put yourself in the shoes, in the job of a recruiter who is looking for potential hires. And you want to make sure you've added all those different keywords into your profile. Could be anywhere, in the about section, in your headline, in your job titles, in your past experience, in the EMLYON section part of your profile. It doesn't matter where it is, so long as it's somewhere on that page, then you're going to appear in search results. And then the other thing to do, if you are looking for a new role, is to make sure you adjust the career interests area of your profile. So if, again, you're on your profile, section here right at the top says show recruiters you're open to job opportunities, and you control who sees this. Okay, so if you go onto that section of your profile, you'll see you can turn on I am looking for new job opportunities, and you can determine who sees that. And by default, you can set it so that your current employer doesn't see this. So if recruiters from your current employer are searching LinkedIn, they won't see that you are looking for a new job. But if recruiters from any other company sees you in their search results, they will see you are open to a new job. And we saw that on the search filter on the previous page, that a recruiter could limit their searches to only seeing people who are interested in getting a new opportunity. So having this switched on and specifying the job titles you're interested in and the locations you're interested in and what type of work you're interested in will again significantly increase the number of recruiters searches that you appear in. So if you're thinking of a career transition, I would recommend that you decide on your career direction as soon as possible. Obviously, what we've been talking about here in terms of getting the right keywords on your profile, you can only do that once you've decided what type of role is it that I want to get into. So make that decision as soon as possible if you haven't already. And then make sure your profile is consistent with your CV or resume. So always assume that a recruiter is going to have open on one screen your CV, your application, on the other screen your LinkedIn profile. And you don't want there to be any differences between the two when you're talking about, you know, the size of budget you managed or how big your team was or what dates you worked at a particular company. You don't want there to be any differences between your CV and your LinkedIn profile. And lastly on this, don't necessarily limit yourself to LinkedIn. So if you add to your Facebook profile details about your work history, education, location, and so on, that doesn't make that visible to recruiters. But what it does mean is that if a recruiter is running an advertising campaign on Facebook to reach people, let's say they're having an assessment day for executives to join a particular part of their business, and they're running an advert to get executives to register to be part of that assessment day, well, you obviously want that advert to be shown to you. But only if you filled in these sections of your Facebook profile will Facebook have the information it needs to actually show those adverts to you. Okay. And then if you're on Twitter as well, by all means, add a couple of professional keywords into your bio, or if there's a particular hashtag that's in use in your industry, make sure that that's in there as well. It's all about making sure that recruiters are able to find you when they're looking for hires. And I'm conscious of time, so we're going to open things up to questions in the next 2 minutes. But I'll just say one final thing that is also employee referral schemes. So when you do surveys of employers, you will consistently say that the best quality of candidates that they get is when existing employees are able to refer to them someone that they feel the company should be interviewing for a particular position they have open. So employers love getting more employee referral candidates through their doors because historically it's always been their best source of quality candidates. The way that employee referral technologies work is when employees join a company, if a company has an employee referral technology, you know, they'll be asked, would you be interested in being part of this program? Connect up your LinkedIn, your Facebook to our employee referral program. And then the next time we have a new job to fill, our technology will look at all of your LinkedIn contacts, all of your Facebook contacts, see, is there someone there who would be a really good fit for this job we're trying to fill? And if there is, we'll send you an email and say, would you like to share this opportunity with your friend, your contact, this person? And if the company goes on to recruit that person, usually the employee would get a bonus of a couple of €1,000, a couple of $1,000. So of course, lots of employees sign up to be part of this employee referral program because they just get, you know, bonuses throughout the year for doing nothing other than forwarding on an email to people that they already know. Okay. Clearly though, for that to work for you, you've got to have a really well optimized LinkedIn profile with all the right keywords so that a computer is going to recognize that you're a strong candidate for the position they're trying to fill. But secondly, you also need to have a large relevant network on LinkedIn in particular, so that as many of the companies you'd want to join as possible, you have a contact in that company. Otherwise, an employee referral program is never considering you as a potential hire for that opening. So we've covered an awful lot of ground there today. I hope that's been really helpful. At that point, if you've got any questions, please do put them in the chat box. Alison, have we had any come through so far that you'd like me to tackle?
Hello, Tony. Yes, hello, everyone. I'm Alison, hosting today. First class session. And actually, Tony, we have lots and lots of questions. So I'm going to summarise some rather quickly.
Okay.
If everyone can stay with us beyond the current closing time, then you are absolutely welcome to do that. I'm going to summarise and say, if we focus on the headline of our LinkedIn profile for a moment, what are the do's and do nots if you are wanting to change something, like change country, change industry, change job function, and if we are actually out of work, in fact, we are looking for work, what are the do's and do nots when it comes to our profile, particularly our headline?
So obviously, if we are out of work, or if we know we're being made redundant, if our job search doesn't have to be secret, then we can be very candid in our headline. I think what I would recommend or say is important is don't appear desperate. So recruiters love to find good candidates. If you're immediately available, then that isn't necessarily a bad thing. That can be a very positive thing. If they've got a role they need to fill as soon as possible, the fact that you're able to join them right away can be a real plus. What you don't want is to look desperate, like you have been out of work for ages and you're willing to consider anything. So I would be very specific in your headline. Try and include some unique selling points. Try and give an indication of the kind of opportunity that you would be interested in pursuing. So, for example, experienced salesperson in top 20% of our sales team, now looking for an opportunity in a 5G telecoms operator. Just for example. So I've given people a reason to be excited about hiring me because I'm a top performing salesperson. I've also given them an indication of the kind of opportunity I'm interested in. So if anyone in a 5G telecoms company or any recruiters in a 5G telecoms company see that headline, they're going to be immediately drawn to want to click through and have a look at me. People are often reluctant to be too specific there. And I would say to you, do be specific. People like to say, oh, I'd be interested in a career in consulting or corporate strategy or this or that. But what you end up doing by trying to keep all of those opportunities open is you end up not appealing strongly to anyone. So it's much better to say, I'd really love to join a small niche consulting firm, and then people who are in small niche consulting firms will be drawn to wanting to look at your profile. Whereas if you keep it too broad, it doesn't make any particular type of person want to click through to you. So include a USP. Do give an indication that you're looking for opportunities, and try and give a steer on the location you're interested in, or the type of company you'd like to join, or the industry you're most interested in pursuing your career in, something that's going to encourage people to look at you. The other thing I would say about the headline, very recently it's been extended so that you can now include 3 lines of text, and anything that's in your headline is a keyword you will appear most highly for in search results. So if you look at my profile, you'll see I have things like social media marketing, social selling, recruitment marketing. These all feature in my headline because I want to appear high up in search results for those search terms. So as well as having a sentence that does a great job of selling you as a candidate, you could also, after that, also add in some other keywords to get yourself noticed. I hope that helps.
Hello, Tony. That's very helpful indeed. And I'm aware that the time is now running on to the next session. And I believe that everyone has the opportunity for another session on international opportunities. So I just want to say that I will bring together the questions that we haven't answered yet, and hopefully we can respond to those separately. And just to let you all know that this webinar, this event appears in the Virtual Alumni Camp in this Congress Centre at the weekend, and it also appears on EMLYON's YouTube channel. So you will be able to listen to all of this session again. I just want to say on behalf of everyone, the school, our alumni, and the full team present, Tony, thank you very much for an excellent session. Thank you very much, and goodbye.
Thank you ever so much. Been great to be here. Have a great rest of the event, everyone.